Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Switch to Life. And in today's video, we are going to be reviewing Inside Out spin-off series Dream Productions, which is a series of short films which actually feel more like a TV show than anything, but there's only 4 episodes, and to be honest, I actually watched the entire series and it took less than an hour and a half, so I have no idea why they didn't turn this into a full-on movie. I mean, it does tell one complete narrative from start to finish over the course of the 4 episodes, so why not just turn it into a movie? I mean, the only reason to ever make it a TV show is if the plot is too big to fit into a theatrical movie and needs to be broken down into chunks. But the thing is, this TV show is actually less runtime than the actual movies, which is super weird. But it's time to talk about the show. First, the animation is really good. It's not like a lot of other Disney Plus originals where they just have a low budget, so the animation looks a little wonky. Here, it actually looks good. It's almost like a movie. I mean, did we expect anything less from Pixar? No, we don't. As for the voice acting, well, the voice actors did a really great job. It felt like they weren't just reading from a script, even though in reality most of their characters were reading from a script, but essentially they felt like these were real people with real emotions. I'm glad that they managed to get some of the movie voice actors to reprise their roles, even if they were literally just 1 or 2 lines. And as for the music, well, I mean, it's not really that great. I mean, it's not memorable, but it does add to the story, which is really good. However, there is one thing I do love. They managed to make a turning red Easter egg by having one of the imaginary boyfriends sing a Four Town song.
Never not on my mind. Oh my.
He is good.
As for the humor, I really enjoyed what they managed to do with all of the dream and brain puns and all that, and especially how funny it was. Granted, in my opinion, this series is not as good as either of the Inside Out movies, which makes sense. But to be honest, the humor, it's just not as good as the other 2 either. And the story also isn't as good. I mean, this isn't Inside Out 3, this is just a spin-off. In fact, it's not even meant to take place after Inside Out 2. It's an in-between-quel. It takes place in between the first and second movie. Also, it's more of a spin-off than anything because instead of focusing on the emotions, though they do have a pretty big appearances here and there, the main characters are the Dream Production crew. And so Dream Productions is about a movie studio called Dream Productions where they make dreams in Riley's mind. And just like a movie studio, they have directors and crew members, they have actors, and it all comes together to make a movie which is essentially a dream that Riley has. We saw a little bit of this in the first movie, but now instead of forgettable background characters, they're front stage and center, and we actually get to learn a lot about it. I also love how this feels like a documentary because not only do the characters make fourth wall breaks pretty much all the time where they talk to not the Riley camera, the us camera in the real world. This is pretty much a documentary, and they talk to us, they have one-on-one interviews, give us their personal insights, but throughout the entire series, we have really awesome camera angles that just make it look like this is a documentary. They're catching the characters in the real world, which is really cool. And oftentimes they have like really shaky camera movement, or they have props getting in the way here and there that prevent us from getting a good look, just like a real documentary would do. It's full screen whenever we're looking in Riley's mind or the real world, but as soon as it turns into Riley's perspective in a dream, they add black bars on the top and bottom and change it to widescreen, which I thought was really cool. I was actually pretty happy with this series, and I found it relatable because my personal goal in life is to get into the movie industry. And seeing these characters who are basically movie directors have some emotional struggle was really inspirational to me. Just, these guys are people and they make mistakes. That's okay. And oftentimes they worry if their movies are going to be hit or miss. And if they're a hit, they are praised. If they're bear a miss, there's consequences. Like, for instance, our main character, Paula, she was one of the best directors when Riley was a little kid, a toddler. She was making Riley a bunch of happy, fun time dreams that were really good. One of the best things that a director can do is connect with Riley, and one of her biggest hits was Farewell My Passy, where we see a young Riley say goodbye to her pacifier as it leaves the train station. And then the next day, Riley decides to give up using her passy, so she connected with Riley. However, as Riley grew older and Paula's childish dreams were less and less relatable, other directors stepped in and Paula was reduced to a has-been, or at least she would be if she still didn't keep trying at it. Unfortunately, in the first episode, she loses her assistant director, Janelle, when she is promoted to a full-on director by Gene, who is basically the CEO of Dream Productions. And Gene makes everybody realize that they are making some great quality dreams, but Riley is forgetting them at a faster and faster rate. Last night, Riley had a really great and amazing dream, but it was forgotten before lunchtime. So the Dream Production crew decides that they need to make a dream that Riley will remember her whole life, which isn't really possible, but, they'll try. So anyway, Paula, now without her assistant director, is given a chance to make the opening dream. Now in the real world, Riley is preparing to go to a middle school dance, so Paula decides to make it super magical. At the same time though, Riley also managed to locate one of her childhood toys, a music box rainbow mermaid unicorn, which is a little weird. But anyway, she brings it to school and it gets a little bit embarrassing, so something that brought her joy now brings her some shame. But Paula doesn't realize this, and while Paula was able to make a successful dream by having a really great dance party, Paula brings in a life-size replica of the music box, which turns the dream into a nightmare for Riley. And then there's a safety problem, and the music box falls and eventually eats the Riley camera.
Ah! The Claire wants me dead! Okay, wake-ups are bad.
So in episode 2, Paula is given a new office because she, had a wake up. And then Gene decides to hire her a brand new assistant director. And this guy is Zenny. Zenny is a daydream maker, which essentially means that unlike night dream makers, they aren't given a very big budget. They just have what they work with. They aren't even given scripts. They have to improvise because in daydreams, Riley just has to live in the now. And unfortunately, that causes some problems. Zenny is a great improvising director. Unfortunately, that means that his method doesn't really click with Paula, and the two of them keep fighting as they try to make a brand new dream. But unfortunately, when Paula tries to go for a more mature approach, her method just doesn't really work out, and Riley just has a boring, forgettable dream that everybody hates. In the real world, Riley is focused on trying to get a dress for the school dance, and her mom gives her a really poofy, ugly dress, and so it's up to the dreamers to try to convince Riley to go to a dance despite not having a great dress. So Paula decides to try to get Janelle to come back as her assistant director, or even take over Janelle's directing movie, and that's when Janelle pulls off a really successful dream by showing Riley turn the poofy dress into a really awesome dress. And while Riley doesn't do this in the real world, she does decide to tell her mom, "I'm not wearing your dress. We're going to go shopping and get me an actual one." So Janelle managed to connect with Riley, and after seeing how exactly this was done, Paula decides to change up the script and create a brand new dream. In episode 3, Riley is focused on who she's going to ask to the dance. So the dream makers, especially Paula, decide to find a way to incorporate a boyfriend into their dreams. And unfortunately, Paula doesn't have a lead actor because her main lead actor, Rainbow unicorn decided to quit after a bad string of misses managed to destroy their reputation. But that's when Zenny decides to introduce Paula to imaginary boyfriend. You know, the guy who would die for Riley in the first movie. So, Paula and Zenny make a successful dream with Canadian boyfriend asking Riley out to the dance. And after that dream was a success, they try to repeat it, but it just doesn't go well. That's when Zenny tries to create a love triangle by introducing a second boyfriend. Then Paula brings in a fourth and a fifth and blah blah blah. Boyfriends get everywhere and out of control. There's dozens of boys trying to hit on Riley, and it causes her to just have a nightmare, and she's freaking out to the point where she's given so much stress that her body actually sleepwalks, and the camera is moving around, and the dream production crew are trying to do everything in their power to keep the camera safe, while at the same time making sure that Riley in the real world doesn't fall down a flight of stairs or something. And just as Riley is about to fall, they manage to reel the camera back, at which point Riley steps backward and then bonks into a door and wakes up. And so Riley is sleepwalking at the end of the third episode.
And Riley woke up her parents, so now I've got the other studios mad at me too. See, Dad was having a flying dream. Do you know how expensive those are?
Then Jean calls in Paula and Zenny, and she fires Zenny as an assistant director, and she's going to fire Paula, except she doesn't have a replacement director. So she has one last chance to prove herself, or she will be demoted to brain farts. And at the same time, Jean announces that all of the directors will be forced to work with locked scripts, meaning no improvisation whatsoever. They have to make it word for word on the page, which I guess the writers like. And so when Zenny hears this, he decides to write up his own movie script, which is basically a nightmare that will make it so Riley doesn't want to go to the dance, and he gives it to Paula to direct. And then when Paula reads this and realizes that this would just hurt Riley, she decides to quit. But when Zenny discovers this, as well as the fact that Riley would be the one dreaming, which means that she would be having the nightmare, it would ruin Riley. Zenny tries to stop Paula from quitting, especially because they would just pass off the nightmare script to Janelle. So Zenny tries to convince his Aunt Jean, the CEO, to cancel the locked script, as well as Paula trying to convince Janelle not to make the movie. And while Paula manages to convince Janelle that this is a nightmare, not a dream, Jean decides to fire all three of them and make the dream herself. And so Riley is forced to have a nightmare where she wakes up and then goes to the dance only to be ridiculed, and then wakes up again only to go to the dance and be ridiculed, and then wakes up again only to go to the dance and be ridiculed. So Paula, Zenny, and Janelle all try to sabotage the dream by turning it into an actual dream. They try to make the dance as good as possible, especially by giving Riley a brand new dress, by making it so that her imaginary boyfriends don't show up. And while they try to stop the last thing, which is having Rainbow Mermaid Unicorn drop down from the ceiling, they unfortunately failed to do that. But luckily, Paula gets an idea from Zenny that they just need to convince Riley that this is all just a dream, not real. So they remove the distortion lens from the camera, at which point Riley realizes that this is a dream, and she has a lucid dream. You know, that stage when you're half asleep, half awake, your eyes are blinking open and closed at a super fast rate, and you're basically in control of the dream. So Riley takes control of the dream and turns the dance into an actual dance, one that is really good. And so the next day, Riley decides to go to the dance with her friends, and Anger makes some calls to have some arrangements changed up. Now Paula is the CEO of Dream Productions instead of Jean. Zenny and Janelle are rehired as directors, and it's at this point that the studio takes a new direction. Every night they will have one of two dreams. They will either give Riley an escape from reality, or have a rehearsal for the next day. Kind of like how Riley was able to turn a bad dance into a good dance, at which point she was ready for the dance the next day. So, I thought that this series was really good, though I really wish it was a movie. At the same time, I did like a lot about it. I do wish we got a little bit more of the emotions, but that would kind of take away from the part where this is trying to be Dream Productions. This is a spin off, not an inside out story. So, it makes sense that the emotions are just minor characters here. But anyway, this series was actually really good, especially because it shows how important dreams can be, and also the fact that sometimes it can be super dangerous, because I know you're asleep, but there is such a thing as sleepwalking, which can result in injuries, so... But I also loved how sometimes a dream can help you make a great decision. Even if you don't remember the dream itself, you still remember the feeling. Like, for instance, how Riley was able to gain the confidence to tell her mother, "I hate the dress." And also how she was able to decide she wanted to go to the dance instead of just deciding not to go because she was scared. I also love the parallels of Dream Productions and real life movie directors where they put so much care into their projects, and sometimes they're hit or misses, but either way, you can still tell that it affects the directors on a personal level, which I thought was really good. So, in summary, Dream Productions is definitely worth watching, especially because it has some really cool dream sequences where we see like a bunch of genres being represented. A somber film where friends say goodbye, a rom-com, horror, a musical, and a bunch of other fun ones. And I also loved the humor for the series. So, in summary, while I wish it was just a movie instead of a 4-part miniseries, I also think that it was really good. Not as good as the Inside Out movies, but still a fun time to watch. And that's it for my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed Dream Productions. If you made it this far, be sure to comment down below what was your favorite dream that you've personally had. For me, I can't remember, which is a real shame. But if you guys can remember, make sure to comment down below. Oh, and also make sure to join my membership program, or you can just do the free option and subscribe. But with that in mind, I hope that you're staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.
The chair is occupied by melatonin. Well, I prefer to stand, you know. I feel invigorated.